Crop Talk on Market Journal is supported by Nebraska's soybean farmers and their checkoff. Finally today, we're going to head to a different ag conference now. Earlier this week, Bayer hosted an agronomy event, which took place in Lincoln. Their kickoff one did, focusing on how producers can grow smarter in 2025. During that session, we had the chance to catch up with a Bayer agronomist to reflect on the biggest challenges that the team at Bayer saw in 2024 and preview some of the hurdles that he sees as we head into the upcoming growing season. So looking back on 2024, one of the key challenges that I heard producers talk about was southern rust. Imagine the same is for you. What's your assessment of that situation?
Absolutely, Bryce. In 2024, southern rust was the name of the game when it came to corn disease management. Here's the fortunate thing for 2025. Southern rust is a tropical disease, can't overwinter in Nebraska. The last time we saw southern rust severity at that magnitude was 2006. So it had been almost 18 years in terms of magnitude of southern rust. That being said, there are a lot of lessons we can take from managing southern rust, particularly around fungicides, and translate that to tar spot in 2025. They're both polycyclic diseases, meaning multiple generations a year. But the difference with tar spot is we know it can overwinter. It was detected in late 2021, and it's been building up inoculum every single year. That's what we're looking for in terms of management for 2025.
Okay, what are some of those lessons that we can apply ahead to this next growing season?
Absolutely. Number one lesson is with fungicides, it's always better to lead versus lag. It's really hard to catch up with these aggressive diseases that can turn around a generation every 2 or 3 weeks like tar spot. With that, in terms of timing, particularly for corn fungicide, the most consistent ROI for a grower is at tassel. We're protecting the upper canopy down to the ear leaf. That's what's really helping fill that corn ear late in the season. We want to protect that tissue. A lot of our fungicide active ingredients act as a protectant. So it prevents the spore from the fungus from ever entering the plant, stopping infection to begin with. Plants are a bit different than us. They can't necessarily heal, they seal. So once the damage is done, it's done. We really want to be on the leading side of that as opposed to trying to play catch up.
Okay, and remind me on tar spot, it can overwinter, right? So if producers had that last year, likely they're going to see that again this year if conditions are right?
Likely to see it this year. The big driver for tar spot is moisture. It's not only is there rainfall, but also what we're doing in terms of the pivot, introducing moisture in that canopy every single time it goes around.
Back on fungicide, you talked about the ROI, and there's always a conversation when, as you mentioned, tassels are getting near of, is it going to pay here in this growing season? What kind of research can you share with us that you and the team at Bayer has done over the years to show some of that ROI on Nebraska acres?
One example is a trial we had at Battle Creek this past year, replicated large-scale trial, about 15 by 300 foot plots, replicated 3 times each. We took 3 of our fungicide products. We had a non-treated control. We looked at V5 applications, so when there are 5 leaves out on the plant, we looked at those V5 applications with tassel applications as well, and then we looked at tassel applications alone. Relative to the non-treated control, we averaged about a bushel on those V5 applications. Anything that included a tassel application, we averaged a gain of 31 bushels per acre. That tends to be a bit on the high side of what we see in an average year, but in 24 we did have higher disease pressure with southern rust and tar spot that was there as well.
I think most growers and our viewers today would gladly take that.
Absolutely.
Each and every year. All right, let's go from corn to soybeans now. White mold was the story last year.
Certainly. White mold is always a crapshoot to a certain degree. Really depends how the weather tees up at that flowering stage. 2023 was a tremendous white mold year. We saw it further south in Nebraska than we had seen it before. A lot of that goes back to the moisture, the overcast conditions that we had in late June, early July that favored the pathogen. One of the tricky parts I mentioned, it's hard to catch up with these diseases. We're actually trying to disrupt the infection during flowering. By the time we see that white fuzz, it's too late. We aren't catching up at that point. The damage is largely done. So if conditions are moist, cool, overcast as we get into late June, early July, that's when growers may be wanting to think about a fungicide application. You won't see the pathogen yet, but it's there and we need to disrupt that infection process.
Any particular fungicides you guys have looked for soybeans and white mold that are working better than others at this point?
Delaro completed its Bear's lead offering for white mold in Nebraska. The reason being is it has 2 effective modes of action. It has a triazole and an SDHI that are specifically targeting white mold.
Okay. Well, based on everything you observed over the last couple of years, what else is on your mind and you're sharing with growers here ahead of this growing season?
We touched on a lot of the main points, Bryce. I always encourage growers to reach out to us, particularly what issues they're facing on their field. We're always looking for research opportunities to continue to deliver unique insights to the Nebraska marketplace.
Always helpful when you get that grower collaboration and be able to do some of these trials directly on their fields. Brett, really appreciate you joining us and sharing some of the insights today.
Thank you, Bryce.